Trekland HQ, and we are live. It's all just RIP Nichelle today, y'all. Here on episode 269 of Trekland Tuesdays Live with me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemechek, coming at you from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 for some clarity and sanity and the big picture in everything Star Trek. Yes. Yeah. Of course, we're going to be talking, remembering, reminiscing. Hopefully, you'll be joining in too here on our chat about the late, great, lovely Grace Del Nichols, her birth name, but she soon had it changed, wanted it changed, got her parents to help her change it to Nichelle Nichols, our lovely lieutenant slash commander slash captain Uhura, thanks to Picard and all things from that in her enormous legacy. We're going to be talking about that today. Of course, we've got the chat going. If you're new to Tuesdays Live, welcome. Join in. Let us know where you're from, where you're coming from. We've got a wonderful community here in the chat that joins us every Tuesday at this time. And midway through, I'm going to take a short break. It won't really be a break, but then we'll look at the Parent Analytics TV stream ratings. And then I will really dive into the chat after I start with this. I say soapbox today. We're just going to be doing some basic remembering. Now, I do want to remind you, though, coming up very quickly while you get your Nichelle memories stirred, as if they haven't been stirred already the last couple of days. I do want to remind everybody that coming up very quickly, the time is drawing nigh for you to jump in if you're headed to Vegas to jump in on our one-day Valley of Fire Vegas Memorial Tour, which is Wednesday, August 24th. That's Geek Nation Tours. I'm going to lead it again. It's a small group. It's a lot of fun. But even having said that, even more so before that, the weekend before Vegas, my own Great Birds Origins Tour, retracing Gene Roddenberry's life around Los Angeles for work, for family. It's all the places that led to the creation of Gene, that led to what he became and what Star Trek became. It's something new. It's experimental. It's the beta version, and you can get in with us. The Roosevelt Hotel, the Hollywood Roosevelt, is our hub place. You don't have to stay there. You can just meet the minivan slash minibus to join in with us. But there is a 20% off rate at the hotel if you use the promo code GR100. Alrighty? That's coming up. And of course, Trek Vegas is at the end of the month. There's a lot of excitement there. A lot of things are going to happen slapdash. A lot of plans are coming out. And meanwhile, as we're all enjoying our summer vacations, as we're all still marinating in all the headlines out of San Diego Comic-Con, still watching some of the fun repercussions out of that, we get the shocking news on Sunday, that the day before, really, straight from her son, Kyle Johnson, that Nichelle had passed. Obviously, we knew her health was in decline. Felt more like it was her cognitive health than her physical health. She'd seemed, for an 89-year-old to be doing pretty well. And what I'm hearing is that it was something sudden, say like heart related. So it's been a real shock even to those that have been close to her. But we're all dealing with it with grace. The word is out. The entertainment community is reacting. The human rights, the activists, the rights justice community is reacting. The NASA community and the space community is reacting, of course. And of course, everything Trekland, everybody in pop culture, it's been pouring out our hearts for it. Here in Trekland, it feels like all the internet has turned into one big Star Trek Pinterest board for Nichelle. Everyone from the high to the low, the breadth of fandom, no matter what you are, where you are, what you're doing, in or out of the industry, whatever you're doing, and around the world. People are posting their pictures. If they had a con picture autographed from 2017 or 1967, it doesn't matter. Everyone's posting their pictures and their memories. Those who worked with her are recalling that. I jumped in some on Sunday. It was kind of like my 20th anniversary of wrap up for docing at Will Rogers. So I got the news slow, but after 2 or 3 days, there's no such thing as slow. Yeah. So I'm hoping in the chat today, folks are remembering. I mean, what can you not say about her? What I've been trying to focus on is we all know her as Uhura. We all know the amazing saga that is on 2 or 3 levels right there. We know that just the fact that she was a black person, much less a black woman, on the bridge, on a failed little 60s show, no, on an amazing, groundbreaking pioneer show in that role. And even though we've heard the story now, but even though it's out there, it's something to stop and take a breath. And for all the folks that take this for granted, look, I think we're living in a world right now where we're suddenly going to start taking a lot of things not so for granted. Uh, Cultural attitudes, cultural mores, even legal rights are suddenly not going to be so automatic. And to blithely say, seeing Nichelle Nichols, seeing Lieutenant Uhura back there, even if she didn't have a lot of lines, most of the episodes sitting right there to Captain Kirk's right hand side, right off his right hand, even more so in shot than, say, Spock would be, or the helm folks, Sulu and Chekhov. Scotty, even to see her constantly in frame that way, and a reminder that that's the future and that's what can be. Of course, that was all part of Star Trek's story. I mean, if you're listening to me today, you know all this. What I'm challenging everyone today is to remember that for the folks who are younger. Make that alive, make that fresh context, which is the world in which, yeah, her famous Martin Luther King story, fundraiser, Beverly Hills, I'm sure it was for for racial rights, racial social justice, and Martin Luther King is a speaker. And after it's over, he knows she's there, and someone goes to her and says, "There's a Star Trek fan here. Do you have a minute to say hello to them?" And she's thinking, "Okay, fine." Now, if it's a fundraiser like that, you're thinking, well, it's I don't know, fairly well off people. It's not the kids coming in the back door, or maybe it was. Who knows? All we know is that she did indeed meet him and had the shocking news for him at the end of the season, basically in hiatus time. So what is this? The spring of '67. He has another year to live, but she's telling Dr. King that yeah, they know it hasn't been a huge role for her. Maybe it wasn't all she could be, because the other thing to remember about Nichelle was she was so much more. She was so much bigger than Star Trek in her own career. Before that, she had breaks, dancing, singing, and even some modeling. But she loved singing. She loved live performance. She was in stage production. She was in Carmen Jones. She was in Porgy and Bess. She had her eye on Broadway and New York, and that's really where she wanted to get to. Star Trek was amazing, and she, as we do sometimes, we don't realize the impact we're having. We don't realize the forest for our own trees. And it took Dr. King to say, "No, you stay right there. You are too important. Don't you get it? Do you know the impact you're having?" And eventually, over the years, after she did stay, she did realize by the time of the 70s and the 80s, and by the time she and her castmates all became iconic, whether or not they could pay their mortgages for a time, sadly. But yeah, she realized the role she had. In fact, she realized it earlier, because this is the thing that even still today, we see a lot of folks not get. Even just for the groundbreaking role in pioneering Star Trek that she played as a person of color and a woman, and then as a woman of color, all those layers. And yes, even with the diverse race, seeing a Russian and an Asian man, having that kind of diversity globally represented a united Earth for the future. She was hearing from the young kids. She was hearing from little girls. She was hearing from little black girls. She was hearing from people of all stripes, flavors, and colors. And what I've been trying to, thank God this documentary was just made, Women in Motion, is to remind everyone, maybe even bigger than her Star Trek impact, is the impact she had on our real life, modern day Starfleet. In the late 70s, NASA was still very much, I don't want to say an old boys network, but it all sprang, and if you know your Mercury 12, you know this story. It all sprang from the original dictum about astronauts having to be test pilots. Well, who was a test pilot? Young white male jockey boys. So who was going to be the astronauts for the first few. And yeah, there were women, there were people of color who were trying to totally qualified, trying to break through that glass ceiling, that glass cockpit window canopy in the 60s and couldn't do it. By the 70s, how many social revolutions have we been through already? And I don't mean the polyester one. I mean in real life. And it was time. It was ripe for Nichelle to partner up with NASA and start recruiting in urban high schools, in rural high schools, places where kids that never thought about themselves having a career like that, much less being in a spaceship, wearing a flag on their patch and doing historic things. Today we're all about STEAM education, STEM education. Now STEAM include the arts, science, technology, engineering, math, and then throw the arts in there. We're all about that today. Really, what Nichelle was kind of the first person to embrace that and go where no NASA recruiter had gone before, where no futurist Imagineer in young kids' minds, aside from Star Trek reruns, had gone before. And the impact is measurable. It's amazing. The classes of astronauts that started to be turned out for the new shuttle program, which was running a few years late. I mean, sadly, it was 4 years into the flights. And some of her astronauts were training and getting up there. And sadly, the Challenger crew that tragically lost its lives in early 1986 had 2 or 3 of her recruits. Ron McNair, but the first black astronaut, if not one of the first, Judy Resnick, Ellison Onizuka, I think our first Asian ethnic astronaut, all were in that crew, aside from, yes, Krista McAuliffe, the teacher in space, and the entire Bowen Smith and all the crew. But it was amazing how she had such a personal bond to that tragedy. But yet in the big picture, opening a door, I mean, that just spotlight the impact she'd had and how she changed the face of our modern day future in space. It really did start to look like the face of America. And by then, was it really about how much she was making for her SAG pension and health fund? I mean, by then, it's that whole cast had to get over the fact that they were forever going to carry these mantles, especially Dee and Jimmy and Nichelle and Walter and George. And they all wanted to be actors. They all wanted juicy parts. They all wanted to keep plying their craft. And it was an uphill battle. And it was a struggle for those first 10, 15 years. Icons are great if they don't have to worry about life and the oddities of day-to-day life, the necessities. But yes, she had a great family. Her son Kyle, who's been back in the spotlight here lately, not without controversy, and apparently most all of it unearned. And that's been her sad legal problems here lately, not of her own doing, but of those around her. Agent versus family. And although it was muddied for a while, it's clear now what's happening. Although, sad to say, Nichelle's passing is not going to end that. There's still ongoing legal wrangling going on about her estate. And fortunately, her family, and if you saw anything coming out of the December Nichelle farewell, you saw how together her family was. They called her Auntie Shelley. Her cousins, her nieces and nephews, her sisters, brother. She had a great family. She's from the Chicago area, actually a suburb, Robbins, Illinois. Her dad was a factory worker, but he was also elected the town mayor of Robbins, and he was its chief magistrate. His wife was a homemaker. So she had humble but upward, they were instilling in her a sense of what she could do. And by the time she was a teenager, she was in shows, musicals, building that career. And that's how she got to Star Trek. She actually got to Star Trek. Her first television credit was touched by fame and fate and greatness too. She was in one of the episodes of the one season series that Gene did before Star Trek, The Lieutenant. It's black and white. It's a half-hour dramedy. Just drama, not even a dramedy. Gary Lockwood, right? Gary Mitchell, and 2001. is the lead, playing a young, idealistic Marine lieutenant. And this is before the tragedy. This is before the excesses of Vietnam. And you could still sell a drama, straight up drama about life at a Marine base. Robert Vaughn was his commanding officer. And then, all kinds of guest stars, including Leonard Nimoy, including Majel Barrett. See the testing ground here? And including one Nichelle Nichols, who was maybe the third guest star billing. She played the fiancée of Don Marshall's character, Lieutenant Boma, from the Galileo 7, and of course from Land of the Giants, his regular role. And also an up-and-coming young actor who played a white Marine, a guy you may have heard of, Dennis Hopper. And basically, it was a show about race. It was about Hopper played a racist Marine who you didn't know it on the surface, but he had been recalled by Don Marshall's character from back home. They were both from the same hometown, and they had done really, really, Klan level attacks, burnings, beatings, intimidations. And they took it out at the base. And of course, Lieutenant Rice, Gary Lockwood's character, is trying to make it right, is the name of the episode. And Nichelle played the fiance, who was telling him to stop being so angry and can't you just get along? And he was a real firebrand. And of course, the way is to try to bond the Marine way, simplify everybody and overlook the color. That was the thrust of the episode. And she was a standout. And she has a wonderful story in her book. If you haven't seen it, it may get rare now, but maybe it's out there to have, Beyond Uhura. And she tells a wonderful story about the whole shooting personally, how, you may recognize one of the directors, Vince McKevity, who directed for McKevity or McKevity, I can never remember, directed for Star Trek, was the director of that episode, Small Town, everybody, mid-60s Hollywood, and finally yelled at her for getting out of her key light. And she finally said, I don't know what a key light is. And he said, all these years in TV. And she said, this is my first TV role. And he took her aside and coached her on some TV skills really quickly. Anyway, it was a wonderful experience for her. She certainly put her on Gene Roddenberry's radar in more ways than one. So, because they had an affair for a while, it was crazy. And to her, Gene was happy to have relief from his unhappy home life with Majel and Nichelle both. But Nichelle quickly realized what was going on and backed off, and still loved him his whole life. But she saw the way Majel was, and they both knew that Gene and Eileen's marriage was just a year or two away from not being there anymore, from going away. What an amazing stirring pot right then. And into all of that is where her episode of The Lieutenant was censored, not allowed to be shown, threatened with, because it dealt with racism. It's all well and good to deal with all these other issues and dramas, but boy, racism was the third rail. We were a long way from Archie Bunker and Sammy Davis Jr. and Room 222 and Diane Carroll's Julia. We were a long way from a lot. We were a long way from the interracial kiss in third season. The black-white interracial kiss. Yes, I know Frances Nguyen was Asian. That technically should have been counted as the interracial kiss if you're keeping score at home. I know there were the Brit television moments, and even Sammy Davis Jr.'s variety special with, I think it was it Nancy Sinatra? Anyway, scripted drama in the black-white divide. And that's also Nichelle's legacy there that we all can point to. I just want to make sure that her NASA legacy, and again, Woman in Motion is the documentary that's just been out for a couple of years. It's on Paramount Plus, so that's handy. You should really crank it up and take a look. But this amazing career she had even before Star Trek. She told the story of how she actually sneaked into being singing for Duke Ellington, the great Duke Ellington's band. She also sang with Lionel Hampton, if you know your big bands. That was through the 50s and 60s. And just personally, I, had gotten to know Nichelle over the years, crossing paths. I mean, I started off the fan. I've got my first autograph fan picture that I'm trying to remember where I had it autographed by her finally. And then over the years, coming across increasingly, and I'm going to say this. Um, at one point, she had started to tell the Martin Luther King story. And I certainly recall this at FedCon in the aughts. They had these giant press conferences where they put all 15 guests at the table, but the press is there and they only really want to talk to the 2 or 3 headliners, and the rest of us just sit there quietly and smile. And that's wonderful. And somebody in one of the European reporters asked her to tell the Martin Luther King story. And I hate to admit this now because I've been talking about this. I inwardly groaned. This was 2008, I don't know, 2006, because every time I'd heard her tell it, it got longer and more embellished and more embellished. And remember, so yes, shame on me, because within a few years later, I was at another such event and she was telling, someone asked her to tell the Martin Luther King story in the mid 2010s. And I thought, okay, here we go. And she basically gave you a glorified paragraph. And that's when it hit me, A, extreme shame and guilt that I'd ever thought I could hear that story too long, too often. And B, I knew that that was starting to be the beginning of her feeling her limits and pulling back, not just to tell one story, but that less is more. Less is just fine. Less is good. And of course, the last few years, we've all watched it. We've been a part of that. It was the same thing with Jimmy Doohan, watching him pull back. Watching Leonard had very pronounced moments of pulling back his career. That's why, like, damn you, pandemic, but we beat you anyway. It was such a miracle now in hindsight to have that farewell celebration for Nichelle just last December here in LA at the LA Comic Con. Now, it was not what it was intended to be at the beginning, a standalone event that would have had people from all over the world in May of 2020. So that had to go away. And even with one or two restarts, as we all were dealing with the COVID crazy, the rescission of that, and what one step forward, 2 steps back, it felt like. So even as things were starting to clear up, and even in the fears of another wave last winter of Omicron, went ahead with it under the umbrella of LA Comic Con. So I want to say shout out to them, and shout out to Doug Conway, or Sky Conway, for working with Kyle and the family and still making that farewell celebration happen. It was just a fraction of the size of what it could have been, would have been, and should have been. But for the 100, 200, 300 fans there at various times, it was a godsend. And the best part of all, maybe to help with that, was how much of the video was shared around the world. I think you all saw her, especially at the end, the closing ceremonies. The folks from NASA, Dr. Mae Jemison was there, one of the many people she had inspired, along with Whoopi Goldberg, along with Celia Rose Gooding, who's playing Uhura now on Strange New Worlds. A long, long list of celebrities. They're all chiming in. Of course, Walter and George. Everyone's chiming in. Oh my, I've gone blank. Our Uhura from the Kelvin movies. She's been especially vocal. Yeah. I just want to say now in hindsight, even as they intended to go have a nice, quiet final frontier of sunset years in New Mexico, where Kyle lives, and having his mom with him there. Thank you, Zoe Saldana. Who knew? Zoe Saldana had a very, very sweet tribute on her Instagram just recently. But that's the kind of thing that's happening. It's coming from all over. Of course, that's what we expect. Of course, that's what the fans are doing. But it was so sweet that we did have those closure moments in December. And it was just an honor and a treat for me to be there with her, not taking a lead, but winding up being a host called on several times, more than the original plan called for. Most of all, she wasn't part of it. She was there. She was resting by that time because she'd had like a 2-hour signing time that stretched into 3 hours, I think, for the last chance to have something signed by Nichelle. I was really thrilled because a few years, well, let me finish this. It was a thrill to be there with her family and lead a panel with Kyle and her sisters, all the cousins, all her nephews and nieces in the audience, the big bulk of their family, and just sit back and let them take it away and tell stories on Nichelle when she was younger, tell stories when she was a young mom, all of that, and that was something that I'll never forget. I've still got to get the video of that panel, but I was so proud to do it, and it was something that I knew, even though we needed more fans there to hear all this, it was a great another angle, another insight into the woman that we were all honoring that weekend and that we're all mourning today. Um, I have to say though that of all those years and crossing paths and saying hi Nichelle and then being there and helping with the farewell, the most time I ever spent with her personally, and this is all obviously the last 10-15 years after 20 years of far being a fan, just as we were of all the original cast, was probably about 3 hours we spent at her house filming her interview for the Con of Wrath, my documentary that we are back working on. Many of you still ask about it. I know it's taken way too long, but we're back on track with it now. But the important part was getting the interviews done. And this was 2015. It's 7 years ago. And her cognitive had started to slip a little then. And I was more than a little concerned. But we had got that set up thanks to seeing her again at Walter's star ceremony. So it's how these things work. Actually, no, that's not right. It was at Arlene Martel's memorial service. Arlene Martel, who played T'Pring and died suddenly, and surprise guest was Here Comes Nichelle to join all the original series fellow guest stars of Arlene. And I want to say I got in her face after everyone had done their appropriate memorializing and then reunionizing, and got her there. And we set it up, went to her famous house there in Nichols Canyon. And I had a scare because we sat down and did kind of a short pre-interview and then sat down and she did a mind blink for a minute. And I just kept going. We had just been talking and then we lost it, but we wound up getting most all of it back. And along the way, I got the wonderful story on camera of how she sneaked her way in as a dancer to being a lead singer for Duke Ellington at times. And some other things that were on the sidebar, not so much to do with Star Trek, much less the Con of Wrath, the Ultimate Fantasy event in Houston in 1982. But even some NASA space comments, but some social justice and labor. I'm going to try to get them out of this and get them. And I hadn't even showed those to some of the crowdfunding parties that I did at conventions for several. The Dr. Trek show. There's a clip of her we would share about her music side, but I'm going to bring out something she talked about having a union and having contracts and what that meant to her. But I'll always cherish that day because that's the most time I ever just spent with her normal, and to have her offering to get us a glass of water. Would you like a sandwich? I've got some cookies. I mean, she was being Auntie Shelley for us. And just wonderful. And yes, I did get her to sign her book for me. Aside from that one autograph I got in the 80s, I didn't ever feel like I needed another one. But I did have her sign, and she took a bath on this. She had a two-sided 45 made up to sell at the Houston Con that she sold for years after that because nobody was there to buy it. And then I got her to sign her autograph. I don't know if this has been digitized, but we need to digitize it. Beyond Antares, her new version recorded, and Uhura's theme. So apparently it was a little bit of a surprise. She went a little more sudden than we knew. I'm hearing a lot of plans in the work to further her legacy, her foundation she was a part of, may have a new iteration. I know Paramount is wanting to do some partnerships and do some memorial work. So this is not the end of all of us honoring and remembering fondly our dear Nichelle. And I'm sure, sadly, that there's going to be some legal settlements still in the works. And hopefully that won't become, won't become a downer as everybody goes forward. And one of my first thoughts when I got the news was, and then there are three. So some of the memes, some of the postings, everybody's been paying all this lovely tribute to Nichelle and joining Dee and Jimmy and Leonard and Grace Lee, and Gene, and everyone connected with Star Trek, those icons that had built so much. And good to see Zoe and Celia and everyone else of all the things, realizing the doors that she opened, even when she didn't realize it at first. And even seeing some pushback from folks saying how sad it is that we're calling her a pioneer, that she shouldn't have had to pioneer anything in the first place, which is true. But Nichelle, a lot of people have the heart to do that. A lot of people need the grit and the determination and the vision to promote themselves, but also to promote what's right and what's going to be right for others, as she did in entertainment, but as she did in beyond NASA, the astronaut corps, the entire realm of science and technology, engineering and mathematics, and the arts. Yeah. Once again, something about Star Trek is inventing the thing before we have the buzzword for it. And that was our grand lady. That was Nichelle. So I'm hoping, I know we've had 2 days of this already. I almost jumped in with something soon, but I thought I'll just save it for Tuesday's Live, because we started a little core series called Second Opinion. I hope you look for it. Hope you will like and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. That's going to be coming. I'm just going to, hopefully a day or two after a news headline or a new episode breaks, I'll let the dust settle a day or two, and then I'll come in with a little bit of an angle maybe you hadn't thought of. The kind of thing we do on Tuesdays Live, only more for the YouTube audience. A little pithy core that you don't have to dig out of even a half-hour re-edit. So, because, I don't know if you've noticed, but Star Trek's ramping up. Star Trek's getting big. Star Trek got a lot of attention at Comic-Con. And even as some of the other franchises, it's not a race, it's not a contest, but even as some of the other franchises kind of retrench, pull back, take a breather, Star Trek is stepping out as it should, with this business model, with this capacity to tell so many stories, to touch so many hearts, to reach into so many niches, even if it is all out of Toronto. But to have a whole new era. It is a Latinum era? I saw people trying to call it that now. So we'll see. But for right now, as sadly we've done in 1999 and 2005 and 2015, and yes, for those of you who are around in 1991, we're having a sad moment here to take stock and reflect and celebrate and really, really reflect on how this was more than just a little TV show, more than just a talented cast, more than just a bunch of really cool creatives and writers. What once again, what a mark Gene Roddenberry and his Star Trek and everybody he brought to the fold has had on the world, the culture, and all of us. Okay, one more Nichelle story, and I don't want to steal Neil Halford, my DP's thunder. He had there's a camera DP trick, a very cheap way to get a lot of diffuse lighting. Get Chinese lanterns, the wire, the paper lanterns. Get a globe and rig up which is what, $2, and rig a simple light bulb in that, and it's a wonderful diffuse light. And if you see some of the pictures from our shoot, you'll see that. When we were done and packing up, Nichelle looked up and she said, "Oh, I want that." And Neil started to say, "Oh, well, it's easy. You can get those for like $2 at Home Depot and Lowe's." And she said, "No, I want that." And he was like, "Oh, you mean you want it?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he said, can I take the light bulb out of it first? The light bulb rigging? And she said, "Sure." So in her house filled with so many mementos and artworks from fans and so many souvenirs and paintings from Trek and fandom and NASA and Africa and so many aspects of her music, everyone she'd worked with in music, in the very front of her house at the time. So for a few years, hung this paper round party lantern because it was only a couple of bucks from Home Depot. But that was our Nichelle. She was a hoot. She was a hoot. Anyway, I hope we are filling the chat up with all kinds of fun stuff about Nichelle and great memories. Again, I feel like all of the internet now is one big Pinterest board for Nichelle. So it's great. It's great. It's great. I haven't shared some of mine yet, but I will be doing so even as we go along and even as we work into the rest of the month. All right. So hang on. I'm going to be taking a break here in just a second after I, of course, thank our TTL Club folks on Patreon. This is my Patreon gang. So thank you, Diana Hopkins, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, Anne-Marie Siegel, Keith Rombach, Justin Porteous, Blaze K, Nathaniel Robinson, Andrew Jasinski, and Pranakasha Productions. And then our live wires, Rusty Harrell, Halberd Gunn Johnson, Robert McLean, Alan Johansey, J.R. Poole, Byron Bailey, David Gregory, Gay Clevin Lundstrom, and Casey Shafsky. Thanks so much, guys and gals, peeps. Our Patreon is very simple. It's patreon.com/TreklandLive. We are slowly expanding the streaming empire here at Trekland. Have you noticed? So we've got Second Opinion now. We are going to be hopefully growing a little bit what we do here on Tuesdays live as soon as I can get around to it. Maybe get through August in Vegas. We'll see. Love it if you can come over. Thank you for the support. I keep it small on purpose so a lot of folks can take part and it's easy on me. Meanwhile, of course, around the rest of Trekland, the Trek Files is on hiatus, but that means you can just go back and look at the back 8 seasons, including folks who are no longer with us. I hadn't had Nichelle on. We got the show, didn't really overlap the years when it would have been prudent to have Nichelle on as a guest. But I may find a way to share some of that audio, or the video from our camera, or a couple of hours with her at her house on camera that day. But the Trek Files is where you can find us, and we'll be back in about a month from our hiatus for season 9. That's amazing. And meanwhile, you can check out all the podcasts at podcast.roddenberry.com. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Don't forget, go to larrynimachek.com for the tour info. Actually, we have 4 tours up right now. The Great Birds tour is just the first one. It's coming up. The Vegas one day is with Geek Nation Tours is up. Also, I'm going to be offering a local Trekland Treks the day before the cruise leaves next spring. So you want to get in on that. And then next July is our huge West Coast tour. It's 10 days in LA and San Francisco that Geek Nation Tours and I are doing next July. So you've got a year to prep for that. Otherwise, gang, it's been fun to spend Tuesday here. If you're watching later, join us live if you can. If you're here with us live, you know how that works. Only the Facebook folks are seeing their chat, but the YouTubers and the Twitch are seeing everything. And with that, I guess it's time to say, hang with me. But for right now, if you're leaving us, stay well, everybody. Do all the things. Stay woke. Check your sources. And most of all, Trek well, everybody. Nichelle. All righty. Let me get another swig of this. When was the last time you heard anybody say swig? Yeah. Oh, I needed to mention the Twitter is at Larry Nemechek. Everything else is Larry's Trekland or Larry Nemechek's Trekland. Again, jump on with us there on YouTube and like and subscribe if you would, and Facebook and Instagram. And of course, portal47.net for your behind the scenes, your minicon all year long, no matter where your center seat is. All righty. All right. So let's jump over to some news at the Parrots. And when I say that, I mean the Parrot Analytics. Yes, actually. Thought we were in the hiatus time after Strange New, waiting on what's that show called? Lower Decks. But guess what? We apparently have a Comic-Con bump, at least as far as the internet goes, and at least as far as Parrot Analytics measures it. Look at this. Listen to this. Now, the Parrot Analytics, been around 10, 12 years. They use the internet to try to measure the relative popularity, especially of the streaming-only shows, the old school Nielsen's that measured ad rates for commercials. It's a moot point. No commercial TV, no need for commercials, no need for the Nielsen's. Although Nielsen's trying to find a way to measure that. Parrot's been doing this. We've been following them since the dawn of Discovery in fall 2017. It comes and goes. They're basically trying to look at fan, critical, studio, buzz, commentary, what have you, and mix in real numbers when they can. This week in Trek World, there was a Comic-Con bump. Picard ended before Strange New Worlds ended, way back. But what dominated the headlines this week? Was it really Worf's hair that drove this? I don't know. I would have thought that it was Strange New Worlds and the Lower Deck crossover episode that set the internet world on fire in Trek World. But apparently the Picard portraits, there really wasn't even a trailer. The trailer was just the portrait stills. But apparently that was enough to bump Star Trek Picard up to number 10 in the top 10 digitals this week. So Stranger Things is number 1. It's still exploding the way they measure now. It's 171 times the average show as they measure. The Boys is 41 after that, way back down there, 41 times more popular than Mandalorian. Only Murders in the Building coming up at 31. Witcher, Our Flag Means Death, For All Mankind, yay. Umbrella Academy, Bridgerton, and there's Star Trek Picard at 25.3 times more popular than an average show. Now, all of these are, well, they're all in the outstanding, which is the top 2.7% of all shows that Parrot measures. And this is the US again for the last week. I was just shocked. And not Strange New Worlds and not Lower Decks, but Picard. The only thing anybody, the analyst here at Parrot, has to chalk it up to Picard. In fact, that's a very healthy number, 25.3. Parrot says of their own metrics, that's a 36% jump from where it had been the week before, which aren't posted when it gets down. They only post the top 10 and then show trends, 60 and 30-day trends. Totally chalking up. Yeah, 25.3. So overall, the top 10, just so you know, Stranger Things is still atop that. Then SpongeBob, Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, Sesame Street, Saturday Night Live, The Walking Dead, and then The Boys, number 2 digital, and then The Simpsons. Okay, yada yada. But I wondered, what about Picard? It was in the last 30 days, its trend had been 19.2. So to jump up to 25, yeah, that's a chunk. Its 30-day average had still been at 19.2. And the trend line has been just basically flat. So I'm sure in another week, the 60-day trend line will be up. After all that, just to give you a clue here, what they call their outstanding upper 2.7%, it is still in their analytic, in their metric, still more popular than 96.7% of all other action adventure titles. Meanwhile, Strange New Worlds, it just left us. It's actually sitting above that on its trend line for 30 days, 31.9, and still in the outstanding. It's dipping down. We'll see. They're not giving debates. It's out of the top 10. It's probably still in the top 20. We'll see. Meanwhile, Lower Decks is around the corner, obviously, and got all that buzz out of Comic-Con with the crossover episode. You didn't hear about the crossover episode? Oh my, spoilers. It's sitting at 12.5 times more popular than the average show. Its trend line is up. Is up, very healthy, and is going to do nothing but climb up again when it gets back on the radar. What's going to happen when we hit that? It's going to be a year away, I know, 10 months away. What will the impact of that crossover show having the animated characters come over to live action? I'm trying to think. Yeah, motion pictures. We've got Mary Poppins. We've got Roger Rabbit. We've even got Gene Kelly dancing with Jerry the Mouse in the 40s. But on television, to have such a cross, the Flintstones never went live action with, the Honeymooners. I mean, I'm trying to remember if any live action, other than just for a minute or two as a stunt, like one segment of a variety show. But for an hour drama to involve a crossover animation, I think it's going to be historic. And we'll see how the world and the audience reacts to that point. We got 10 months to count it down, though. But we'll see. We'll see. All right. Here's where we're going to dive in. I'm going to dive in. If you didn't hear me talk about the white hair, by the way, I've been on, it got to be a very talky week. So Chris Jones and I finally did a Ready Room that's out now. And Sean, Trek on the Tube, did a Trek Talk along with Star Trek Boy Sohail. That's out. And then Sean of Trek Culture, only on his other podcast, Strode Star. I'm blanking on the name of it, but it's his long form interview. Sean Farrick, over in Ireland. We had a long conversation about stuff, Trek stuff. So it's been a good week for talking, and all of that was even before Nichelle's passing. So it's the summer. We've got a lot of shit going on out there that we got to deal with. But here in Trek World, what's keeping us going, yearning for that better future and fighting for it, and also having plenty to keep us sated and satisfied between the headlines and the new programs, we're chugging right along. So let's see what's chugging right along in the chat, shall we? Here's where I mark back to the beginning, I guess about 40 minutes ago. But hi to everybody. Howdy. Hello. Hal Morrison. Hi, is this your first time with us on Tuesday? Right at the top there. Good to see you. Fort Worth. Eamon Carter country. I'm dipping over to my Will Rogers side. Yeah. You guys, everybody in the middle of the country, I hope, how's the heat wave doing? You guys, hang in there. But good to see you, Hal. Thanks for joining us. Okay. Is that a real thing? We'll see. I'll check that one out later. Hi, Huron. Shakespeare wrote about Cleopatra, but it seems to fit perfectly here. Alas, unparalleled. Very nice. Very nice. Well, Glenn, I guess there we go. You got the notice and you're able to come visit us. So yes. Oh, Rose, happy STLV anniversary, 5 years again today. 2017, we got to meet. There you go. Yeah. Everybody jumping in here to say your RIPs for Nichelle. Absolutely. I thought so too, Dave. Pictures, recollections, and stories. I mean, it's what happened after, when was the last time we had this, Leonard? Now, Grace passed away just a month or 2 or 3 after that. And especially for original series fandom, that was a moment. But, unfortunately, she did not have the opportunity to leave as big a footprint as a cultural and screen footprint as Nichelle did. So this is really our first time in several years where we've had a moment like this. And I'm glad. I don't want to have everything all at once or too often. Oh, very nice, Alanka. I like your avatar. There you go. Good to see you. Oh, there you go. Well, he owes me one. What? Oh, I skipped to the end of the chat. That was weird. Let us see. Let us see. Thank you, everybody who's going over to Twitch. Thank you for placeholding over there and keeping them. Hey, Scott, your biggest impression of her, and her family said this about her too, as the aura of, yes, queen. She radiated that regalness. Yes. She was, even as just herself, she was a star and immediately welcoming at the same time. Yeah, that grace, the grace and dignity, whether that came from her dance inherently, whatever. Yeah. There we go. Immediately welcoming. Good way to put it. Let's see. This is what I'm trumpeting, Nathaniel. Everyone should watch the documentary Woman in Motion. Yeah. Trek was just the beginning of her contributions to social justice and equality, and her efforts for the astronaut program were far more important. I know it feels weird to say that, right? It's like, oh yeah, well, Star Trek, sure. But then what she was able to do for the astronaut corps and what she was able to do for social justice, she wouldn't have been able to do without her Star Trek resume on her CV. So, yes, 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 yes. Of course, Tony. She had Mr. Adventure eating out of her hand. That was such a moment. Such a Oh, look, here's the Uhura we saw in the animated. It's finally making it to the big screen. Yes, indeed. It took 3 movies. Let's see what we've got going here. Oh, there you go. Good choice, Brian. Your watch party group watched Woman in Motion Sunday night. But it hit a bit different this week. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it would. Hello, Mona. I think you've been with us before, but maybe not. If this is your first time, welcome, welcome. Good to see you. Hey, Fathery. See, I never know whether to call you Father or Stephen because I don't want to copy anybody else. Let's see. Yeah, Mona. It's one of those times. You remember exactly where you were when the Challenger happened. Yeah. And I was working in a newsroom. Yeah. Hey, Galen, what are you saying here? Can I comment on how Shatner gave his blessing to Paul? See, I've thought very seriously about doing a second opinion on this. I saw one fan, at the risk of sounding like you were being keep it there. At the risk of saying you're being a Shatner apologist, if you go back and look at the context, I don't know if the video's been out, but Trek Movie did a good job. Tony did a good job of not just putting a transcript up, but the key quotes you'd normally do, but giving you the vibe of the moment. And they were being very snarky, not even so much snarky, but kind of like, oh, here we are in our millionth interview at a Hall H, and what the hell am I supposed to say different today? And they were being kind of playful and fun. And I'm not trying to say that he was just totally goofing here when he said Gene would roll over in his grave. But what I think everyone took that for was all the, the tip of the spear of social justice and progress and revolution, the representation, the anti-misogyny, the anti-racism, and especially the gender equality, and promoting that and spotlighting that. And I think maybe that is what he meant. I'm not going to apologize or put words in his mouth, but and I saw another fan speak up for what was a big thing in the 90s at times. And Majel said this, was that when DS9 got into the war episodes and the war arc with the Dominion War, and said that she didn't think Gene would ever do that. And that basically said the same thing. He'd be rolling over in his grave. Now, you can disagree with Majel then. She may have been very tied to the 60s and some of the idealism of Gene, and a little less tethered to the dramatic possibilities, because Ira and his crew always said war is part of life, even in the euphoric 24th century, even in the perfect world of Earth, but Earth is not everywhere, and that we have to show humanity dealing with everything. And it was great drama and great storytelling, and the good guys did win in the end. So, I mean, we've seen that kind of thing before. So I'm just saying, I saw one fan saying, what if Shatner is talking about some of the goriness, some of the visual effects, the battle scenes, if he's talking about that per se, or even if he wasn't just being a little bit coy there, just seeing if he could poke and just see what kind of a reaction he could get. Just to jump up, because that's definitely the mood. He was definitely in a let's poke this beehive and see what comes out. Again, I'm not putting words in his mouth. I'm not going to try to explain what he said, but I've seen that raised because you're absolutely right. Gave his blessing to Paul Wesley. I want to know, Paul Wesley's natural hair is very brown. They dyed it dark. I know nothing is, you can't take anything as prime from the fake future of Future Pike. Short timeline Future Pike in maroon, but that was just, it's like what, Kirk's hair went brown because he stayed a captain until the year before we saw him first. I don't know. That's all I'm saying, Gay. I'm not defending or explaining, because I'm sure not inside Shatner's head, but that's a possibility. He might have meant more the storytelling and format more than the the cusp of the social change that the new shows are kind of championing. Just food for thought. It is a great episode, and it's on YouTube. A lot of the Lieutenant episodes are on YouTube. You can watch that one, and then you can compare it with some of the others that are just their more routine episodes, just mere dramas. Maybe had some issue at heart, but it was that episode of Nichelle's that, when it was censored, pissed Gene off so much that got him into this. I'm going to get stuff that he had a whole mid-60s frame of our TV is becoming blander and blander. The government and the sponsors are forcing us into pablum. We're going to have to get really creative to yank it back, even to the 50s days of live drama and what was possible even then. And they were very worried about TV becoming the great vast wasteland, to coin the phrase at the time. And Star Trek was one of his answers. If we put everybody in polka dot and purple striped aliens and spaceships and ray guns, maybe we'll slide it right past the censors, which in many ways is what happened. But yes, it's online too. It's on YouTube. You can find it. To make it right. Hey, May. Good to see you. Is this your first time with us on Tuesday? I'm glad you're here. And I'm glad you were there. Yay. Thank you for being there. I hope it was, look, all I had to do was just kind of get things started, give them a little context, and get out of the way and let the family go and run with it. Starting with Kyle. And anyone who had lingering doubts, I will say this, anyone who had any lingering doubts about what was going on with the legal hassles around Nichelle's estate, you came to the farewell event and you saw Kyle, her son, and you saw all of her sisters and all of her nieces and nephews and, and brothers-in-law. Everybody there of her family came in for that. Had a big celebration with her all day. Were there all weekend. Several of them were on the panel. And a couple of her old sorority sisters, her sisters and her sisters in business, when they were starting in their Women in Motion Foundation, they began, and you can tell who's on the right side and what's going on there, which was great to see if you were there live. So I hope you had a good time. May. Very cool. Women's History Library in Indiana with an autographed copy of her book. Indiana, the home state of Kate Mulgrew and, well, of Jerry Taylor, and I should say Catherine Janeway. There you go. Even beyond the dance at the end, but the presentations from NASA, I'm so glad all of that finally were able to happen and catch her in time. Saw her twice in the 90s. Yes. class and elegance, and that fashion sense she always had. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. There you go. Another vote for Women in Motion. Yay, gay. You just found her appearance in a Ron Ely Tarzan episode. Wow, Halbjorn. I got to look for that. I hope it was something well done by 1966. I hope it was something well done. Yep, where she's singing with Spock. And how great that they've cast Celia to be able to bring that through, too. Hopefully, we'll see more of that on a weekly basis. Hope it doesn't go the way on Strange New Worlds that it went the way on the original series. They got her to sing 2 or 3 times first season, and then it all sort of kind of, aside from an occasional hum here and there, with Nomad going by. Yeah. And yes, Mona, put that on your list. And hey, Diana, another vote for, we'll just have the tote board here. Everybody voting for Women in Motion. Spread the word, too. Mm-hmm. It was really well done. It sure was. And it was fantastic. And Charlie's our new darling. Our darling. Okay, Scott. You always hear the audience groan at those Martin Luther King style stories from celebs, but honestly, you look at them as their greatest hits. There's something special about hearing them live. Yes, I learned a special lesson. If I'm going to be privileged or lucky or both enough to be at a place where I'm hearing someone tell a story like that, and then if I'm doubly, triply, quadruply, quintuply lucky and or blessed to hear them tell it more than once, and even if it gets longer over the years and more embellished, appreciate this, because it hit me like a ton of bricks the day that it was just a couple sentences. And I thought, oh, we have turned a corner here, and I'll never forget that for Nichelle, but just that whole paradigm of be grateful for what you have, because you never know when it's not going to be there, or it will start to diminish. Time is the fire in which everything gets shorter. Mm-hmm. Ah, hey JR, you met her at Wizard World Pittsburgh. Didn't want to talk Trek. She brought when I mentioned NASA, of course. Any of the actors, they're there to represent Star Trek, but any of them who have done any iota of anything outside of Star or other work, other acting, other performance, yeah, that's an old interviewer hook too. Always get them talking about, but that's human nature. It's nothing slimy about it. That's somebody comes up to you and talks about the thing you don't expect to talk about that you also enjoy. That's great. Thank you, Matt, again, for poking there on Zoe's name. Okay, and Brian. Yeah, Mona. Uh-huh. And yeah, Mae Jemison, who was there at her farewell too. Yeah, yeah. Oh, and I should have mentioned too, people have been holding vigils at the Flame Monument at Sci-Fi. Oh, STO. That's awesome. That's awesome. And of course, the Hollywood Walk of Fame, Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, I didn't mention this, had a flower ceremony at 1:00 yesterday. And I was trying to get there, but I had a business Zoom meeting that I thought was an hour earlier, or I would have joined them. But a lot of the shout out to the LA Away team folks here who were there, Yesenia and a bunch of them. There were a dozen. Channel 9, the CBS station, came out to cover it. So that was very fitting. Her star on the Walk of Fame. Made sure there were flowers there, and probably will be for a while. Mm. 2 weeks ago, and she was able to mention Nichelle in her lecture. Very good. Sorry about that, everybody. Yeah. What? That's just. Sorry, everybody. Every once in a while, I think my chat is being clunky. Okay, why don't we? Boom. Thank you. Yeah. Ah, Women in Motion had you in tears, Melanie. I don't know. I don't know why. It was an amazing story. Yeah, how hard she worked at it. I still have to sort this out, but she apparently had an issue with not the folks in Washington, but regional folks just getting her pay that she had agreed to do, a fee for doing that. And I think she repaid them in droves. I think they got far more impact and far more results from Michelle's 2 years recruiting than they were expecting. Mm-hmm. Well, there you go, Rusty. We all have those long-winded stories our friends hear 1,000 times. Maybe this person asking to hear it, it's their first time. I know. Or they want it to be on their recorder, their camera. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you could be there, Scott. The final con December was very special. The signing experience in her suite, the family panel, the party at the end all made us feel like part of the family. It was really surprisingly personal. It was. And as much as I hate that more people couldn't be there, I mean, for those who were able to get it together on 2 months' notice and get there, it was once in a lifetime, and we all knew that. Oh, okay. The tracks wound up on her later CD, which is there. I used a thing on an Instagram story I put up, or a reels. There's a whole album of upbeat, jazzy pop standards and a little sultry torch singing. Mm-hmm. Right. Yes, Melanie. I mean, yes, they were kept behind the door and out of fame in their own right, and Hidden Figures shine the light on that too. But not as the face of NASA, not as the face of America in space, not as the face of America's future. And that's, yes, single handedly. Kind of shocking. And so, in the big picture of things, that was more important than playing Uhura, but Uhura was the key that unlocked all of that, if you want to look at it that way. Yeah. Yeah, Rusty, absolutely. She changed the world and she knew it and she deserved it. Yes. Uh, what do we have here, Scott? Since I can't play it or know what it is this for Women in Motion? A trailer or something? I'm sure somebody will say something to me. Star Trek: The Latinum Era. I like that. Um, boy, my chat's very dodgy today. I'd make it up. I've seen other people call it that. I was saying the new golden era, the new silver age, whatever. If you get that, no, gold press platinum, no less. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The official Star Trek social account said Latinum age. Yeah, I've seen that kind of bubbling up different places the last 2 or 3 years. Ever since we finally hit critical mass, it got beyond just complaining about Discovery and then Picard. Once we branched out to lower decks and then piled on and now piled on again, I've seen that coming into usage. Um, Diana, Neil, still a putz. We're getting personal here. Small circle, everybody. Maybe a putz, but he's a very damn good cameraman and game designer and game writer and several other skills. Composer, he just did some guitar music. I had no idea. If I knew that, I'd long ago left my brain. Anyway, um, what are you saying here, Dave? This past Saturday afternoon, at Urban Nerd Con, we had a panel with Sirach, Adele, oh wow, and Anthony, titled Beyond Antari, standing on the shoulders of Star Trek giants. And of course, much was said about Nichelle and the path. Now, this was before it was announced that she had passed. I think it was on Saturday, the path that she led among other Trek stars. And of course, yes, by the next day, I can read the end of it there. So I don't want to take too much credit here, but at a FedCon in 03, I've been to two FedCon, been a guest at two FedCons. And 03 was during Enterprise's first run, and Anthony Montgomery was a guest, and Nichelle was a guest. And I was talking to him, and he said, "Oh, I have never met Nichelle Nichols. I've never met Nichelle Nichols. I've got to meet Nichelle Nichols this weekend." And we were at a guest. They had the guests scooped up to go eat somewhere together at a castle or something. And I said, "Well, let's just make that happen right now." And went over and I said, "Nichelle, Anthony is on Enterprise right now and has not had the chance to say hello yet." And so they had a huge hug and so I got to, in a tiny way, got to get Anthony and Nichelle together the first time. And we have a picture. I haven't dragged the picture out in ages. I need to do that. But that was cool to be there, be a part of that moment. I mean, that's one thing about Star Trek is as all the creators, not just the actors, but the writers and everyone involved. Dave Blass has been active on his Twitter again. The canonization of Uhura as a captain on the Londegrans, and a future biography that's all in the plaque. Jeff Mandel and Dave got into a plaque off, making sure that end of Uhura's legacy, and by extension Nichelle's, has been out there too. And a lot of people are just waking up to that, if they're waking up at all, if they're woke at all. Yeah. So it's been fun watching everybody salute her. Urban NerdCon, very cool. Well, hello again, Christoph, to you too. A lot of summer peaks higher than the temperature peaks. I am sorry to hear that. Our governor, Gavin Newsom, just declared a monkeypox emergency in California. I haven't got into what that means. It was just San Francisco City County, but we will see what happens with that. Good Lord. Well, that's good way to go at it, Glenn. Yes, and I saw this too. Bernard Cribbins passed, who was a gem and was on Doctor Who. It's been a rough month. We've lost so many. I was saying last week, we keep losing some of our Star Trek luminaries, and now our queen. Somewhat tangentially, you took your son to GalaxyCon in Raleigh, where you got pictures with Terry and Andy, right? And saw this panel with Shatner, which led to debate when Shatner goes off on some circuitous, barely related story. Is it Kirk-splaining or Shatner-splaining? I don't want to cloud the waters of Kirk-splaining. I think we need to keep that as Shat-splaining. Plus, it's fun to say, Shat-splaining. Totally need to keep that away from the character and put it on the real person. But good. Glad you got to see Terry Farrell and Andy Robinson. Hey, JR, patron ahoy. Thank you. Thank you again. Oh, and hey, Anne-Marie, thank you back. You're welcome. What did I do? What did I say? What are you saying here, Rusty? When you had Nichelle there in Orlando for MegaCon, after the convention closed, you were taking down the table placards, and she said, "Hey, I want that." I said, "What, this 2x4 foot oversized name tag?" She said, "Yes, how can I get that home?" And you talked to her agent. Gonna finish reading it here. And he said, "No way, throw that away. Her house is overflowing with stuff like that." I really wanted to send it to her, but you never did. But that was her. That was her. But it wasn't, she wasn't a hoarder. When you went in, at least in 2015, when you went in her house, she had rooms. It wasn't like some sad reality TV show where they're going in to help people. Of course, I didn't see her storage barn or building either. Hey, Boos, you say swing? Swig, I mean? Good deal. Swig's an old folk okie. Take a swig of that. Yeah. Yeah. It's not just for pirates. The last time you heard somebody say swig was today. Okay. Well, Boos, I'm glad you're here with us. Yay. Um, mm. Michelle's passing made page one news there too, as in Western Austria, Innsbruck, I believe. Of course, the National Press Agency didn't mention her NASA activities and all of that, but one medium only printed the press agency text. Okay. A 2x4 name tag would make a great costume for a convention. I think it's been done, Glenn. I think people have gone. Hey, Linda, glad you could join us too. The last time you heard swig. Well, happy bicentennial memory, Rusty. There we go. And the parrot marking. Okay, there you go. Okay, hey, Halbjorn, jump in here, Mr. Patreon person. You first met Nichelle in 2014 at DST. The autograph table, and you had a TOS poster by Dusty Abel. Yep. The ones that Roddenberry, I think, commissioned. And as soon as she saw it, she said that she wanted that poster. Sure, it's yours. She did that. She did that. There you go. I love this now. We started the whole Nichelle, I want that hashtag. Oh, she smiled and said she was just kidding, and then she signed it for you. She was a very kind person who knows when to joke with her fans. I was so glad that you got a photo shoot with her that same year. Exactly. Well, very cool, Mona. You're a very colorful writer who cannot be accused of marinating in humdrum adjectives and colorful metaphors. You still stay swig. Now you say still like you're older than 15 there, Boos. You still stay swig and you get weird looks when you do. Well, I think it's a perfectly fine word. I don't think it has any racist or otherwise bad origins to it at all. Nefarious. If you wear that 2x4 costume tag in the, yeah, you got to vote there. You got there, Glenn. Okay, Dave. See, there we go. We're all over the place. You're not in the, oh, Jesus Christ. Is hashtag not my wharf a thing? Gandorf looks ridiculous. Okay. Who's to say what he looks like in 2401? I don't understand how it's violating the canon picture we already have. But I guess it's, I don't know. I had a theory that maybe it was upsetting some people to realize that enough time has passed that having Worf and white hair make people uncomfortable. That so many years have passed since they were a kid and loved young Worf, or even future fake aging Worf. I don't know. The whole thing just, of all the things for people to get up and have affecting their life enough to post about it, I never thought white haired Worf with a filled in mustache was going to do it. Really, a hashtag not my Worf. Wow. Swig is going to make a big return to your vocabulary. Well, we'll see that. Yeah, I thought he looked mighty handsome too, Mona. Yes, I did. Okay, so now we have a vote for amazing. We have we have a vote for great from Boos. We have a vote for amazing from Gay. Yeah, there we go. And I totally agree, Mona. It's going to be amazing. Oh my, spoilers. Yeah. Oh, good. You found the center seat. Well, there's 10 hours of it. it's mostly really good. There's times when it's, but I thought the writing and Gates' delivery was really, they pivot. It's very adroit. They're here, and then one line can go over here and get into something else. It's very nimble. It did. I think it did the week of the finale, and then it immediately fell out of the top 10. Now, that doesn't say that it's plummeting to the underworld. It's just in the second 10, maybe. There you go. Trek on the Tube. Woohoo. Yes, it's not going to be like Roger Rabbit. I think it's all live action together, or his animated in the animated. Yes. I mentioned 2, and they both are. Thank you, Halbjord. Clone Star podcast. If I'm going to mention it, you would think I would have the name. It's Sean Frederick's other podcast besides Trek Culture. Andy Tay. Hello there, Andy. And you're coming at us on YouTube. Is this your first time on Tuesdays? Welcome. Glad you got in. You thought Will Rogers was an Okie. Yes, he was. But he traveled around from roping to sketch comedy and stand-up comedy and punditry, and he wound up in New York at the Ziegfeld Follies, and then doing silent movies, and then came out to LA with Hollywood and Sam Goldwyn, and lived in LA from 1919 till his death. There you go. There's a sliver of my tour. I will talk about Will Rogers as often, you all will not believe this, I will talk about Will Rogers as long and as often as I talk about Star Trek. It's just, that's kind of, I could say it's one singular subject versus the vastness of Star Trek, but there's a lot of subjects wrapped up with Will Rogers too. Anyway, but I'm glad you joined us, Andy. Let me know if this was your first time or where you're coming from. Oh, I knew what you meant. There we go. That's 2. Okay, Sean, we got you 2 subscribers. All right. Amazon has the second part extended edition of Shatner's Captains, but the German dubbed audio only. Unbearable. Sorry, Christoph. Hey, Michael, what are you saying here? Don't know if people here saw it, but Supernatural did a special episode with the Scooby-Doo characters. It was quite good. Oh, with them animated? Okay. There you go. I know Supernatural is the hugest cult in the world, apparently. I say huge because they have supported a fandom. Creation had a license for their convention, still does. The show finally ended. Almost no one I know has ever watched it, but apparently tons of people have. So to me, it's the hugest cult in the world. But that's awesome. That's awesome to hear that. Now I need to go find it and see it. Makes total sense, though, to have the Scooby-Doo gang with them. Uhura inspired the Universal Translator, and the UTU inspired you to become a polyglot. Do they have a cure for that? So Nichelle influenced you, even though you didn't know, you didn't grow up on TOS. There you go. Ripples, the butterfly effect. See, there you go, right there. You're living it. We're all living it, actually. Melanie, you saw her at 2 or 3 different cons over the years. At one con, she had a Siamese kitten with her. I asked her the kitten's name. It was Uhura, of course. Well, I guess we're doing something good because we're getting all kinds of spam crap in here. There's an agreement on Mr. Adventure. Yay. Okay, I'm going to... Okay. Okay. It was. Sorry, I had to do a little housekeeping here. We're apparently getting too popular here in the chat. Okay. Oh, Mona, good to have you back then. And yes, hit that bell, hit that button, whatever it is. Yep, yep. Okay, good, Christoph. You and me both got it then. Oh, Rusty, I hope not. The Get a Life was ridiculous enough because lots of Trek fans have a life. And the audience from that sketch, the con audience, was a bunch of teenage boys. And I was like, where's all the middle aged women in the 80s? Yeah. Bill has been known to try to elicit responses from fans. That's like, yeah, poke the bear. Yeah. Well, I don't think he's matured into being an idiot. I know he said blunt things online, which gets me back to saying, is that him or is that his people? Or are they all just poking to get poking going and get some buzz happening? Okay, Glenn, no comment. Uh, okay, Nathaniel, if you're not mistaken, Tartikoff would have made DS9 independently of Star Trek. How Gene would have reacted seems superfluous in that context if it had been in its own universe. How did something come up about Gene and DS9? And because he saw Mike and Rick's take on it, thinking they didn't want to do another ship show. They didn't want to be on a planet, it would be too expensive. So a space station was the middle ground. And then everyone talking about how it was a ripoff of Babylon 5. But from that logic process, that's what it was. And how supposedly Gene saw some early notes, but he was pretty much not all cogent at the time. So I'm curious about where you're reading that. I'm not challenging. I just would like to know. There's a lot of fuzzy areas in things. Christoph is saying you totally sympathize with the chat. Most, if not all, the new Trek has elements your mental image of Gene's views might not like, and Shatner probably has only seen bits, not all. Could be. Of course, it's almost not fair to say what somebody who died 30 years ago would be thinking now. You don't allow them to grow, and then we grow during a lot of our lives, and at some point maybe we shut down taking in the new and not embracing it all the way through. Boy, we're just a beacon. We are just a beacon here. So who will do hairstyle commercials the next 3 decades, Anson or Wes? Yeah. Or to make it so. Right. There you go. So that's it. All Trek has aspects of war, not just this. Now, I don't agree that Gene would dislike any of it. I might be wrong. I didn't know him. Well, I think there's a difference between, say, Balance of Terror and that submarine one-to-one limited, engagement, or ongoing the way the Dominion War arc went on episode after episode. But that's part of the reality too. It's not a glamour battle, even as intriguing and tense as the drama out of, say, Balance of Terror might have been. There's a grindingness to real war that takes a toll on humanity, and it's sad and tragic, and we try to avoid it, but it has happened. And this was not a war within Earth or within the Federation. This was Federation externally to other adversaries. So, are they so? How does the perfect humanity century react to a grinding war? And that's what Ira and Ron and everyone were trying to get into. But that was Magel's opinion in 1993, and nothing. It's like there's a point to saying, did Gene object to that kind of thing in the 60s because he knew they could never afford it, and he didn't want to go down that road and be disappointed or feel like it was cheaped out on? There was one episode of Combat that I was caught one day flipping channels, scrolling through guides, whatever, and it was Combat was World War II drama with Vic Morrow, and I didn't watch a lot. I mean, when I was a kid, I watched them. My older brother did, but I don't watch the reruns, haven't binged or anything. But I came across one, and it was like a Twilight Zone almost, and it was one guy. It was a little submarine warfare thing. One guy on foot, the lead, with one guy in a German tank. And the whole thing was a cat and mouse game, the two of them. But I just thought, well, there's something you do for the cheap. All you had to do was rent one tank. And ooh, look, it's a tank in a half-hour show in the 60s. Yes. Well, there you go. Didn't his thoughts change in the 60s to 90s? Well, they did back and forth, and boy howdy, we are so inundated today. Melanie says, when Betty White passed away, yes, there was a documentary movie planned for release on her upcoming 100th birthday, Betty White, First Lady of Television, so it wasn't released early. Betty White also fought for civil rights. Yes. Arnie Duncan, what was his name? Arthur Duncan, yes. Black tap dancer, who I remember from years on Walt Disney, on the Lawrence Welk show. He was his tap dancer guy who would do the tap bits. Yeah. And Nichelle Nichols had a similar impact. Yes. Hi, Sophia. Hope everything's well with you in Portugal. We're so global here. Nathaniel, Woman in Motion should be a watch-along. Call Ali. Well, we have talked about trying to find the time to have some kind of a special. We'll see. I'll throw that at him. We'll see what's going on. Now August is heating up for me, so it might not be until September. We'll see what happens. A watch-along would give the tissue industry a boost. Tangential conversations? What are those? Oh, Matt, stop teasing me. And here you go. Thank you, Scott. I saw she'd posted something, but I didn't know how public it was yet. Yeah. So good on her. Spam. And not Celia's article. That's not what we're talking about. Yeah, spam to the bright side of life, comma, always look on. Yes. Speaking of tangentials, a funny thing happened to me on the way to 10 Forward. Oh, really? It's Second Opinion. What was that in relation to, Scott? You can tell me later. Sophia, you miss new Trek episodes. You're so spoiled, Miss 2022. I'm kidding. No, you're in Portugal. You've had to put up with the drought for many years. I know. One more who is gone from us. Yes, I know you're coming into the conversation a little late here, but we have the technology to always remember her. She will always be with us as long as we remember her. Good words, even if they were said fictionally first. JR thanks me for poking pictures and videos of her farewell appearance. Would have loved to have been there, but the pictures were still worth 1,000 words at a bar Latinum. Well, good. I mean, that's one thing, through the pandemic, being able to meet up and just the internet in general, for all the trash and the ugliness that is unleashed and the killer magnetic algorithms that are manipulating minds. There is still a lot of good that the internet has brought us, and the ability to connect socially and just share information. Unfortunately, it's just as equally easy to share misinformation. This is very true, Linda. You love it when stars fanboy or fangirl over other stars. Yes, it's also like when we have the mutual admiration society between everything Star Trek and everything NASA. No, you're the hero. No, you're the hero. No, you're the hero. It's fun to watch, especially watch it in real time right in front of you. It's always kind of gobsmacking. Okay, thank you, Scott, for dropping in. I'll talk to you later. And Avoid that monkeypox like the plague. Yes. Well, Stephen C., you're still down there in Austin, and us Okies and Texases still have our folk ways, don't we? Well, Matt, I rest my case. You're an Okie there. Yep, yep. Linda, maybe there's an Okie outpost up by you. You're absolutely right, Rusty. Yes, there's a lot of Indiana Okie history. Indiana Trek history. Yeah. Penny, Eric. See, I keep forgetting about Avery and Garrett. Yeah, but Penny definitely. That's why Starbase Indy and the Starbase IndyCon were so strong back in the day. It's in the roots. It's amazing. Well, I had the pleasure, you're talking about the Austria. Yeah. I didn't even mention this. I had the pleasure to talk to 3 different BBC outlets about Nichelle. It was 2 of them for just for 2 or 3 minutes, but it was still nice to be asked, and it's still nice they were doing stories. Good Morning Scotland, we had talked for 6-7 minutes, which is so short, but it's like, how do you pack it in there? And I pointed to NASA, and I pointed to her singing career that she was going to go back to in clubs and dance when Martin Luther King gave her the lesson. No, and yes, and how regal and queenly she was. I should have seen this coming, Glenn. You want some swag? Got it. Got it. Got it. Oh, there you go. Yep. We didn't have her for ThunderCon or anything to do with SoonerCon over the years. I'm sure she came in with a creation or a DreamWorks. But there you go. Yep. And those are the ones I mentioned. Zahir, you feel differently about Wharfgate? Boy, I have been too busy. I missed all this good stuff, if that was catching on. He's a young 60, but some people go white early. He looks good. The Klingon calisthenics paid off. Yeah, we're talking about Klingons and forget species diversity. What about individual diversity? And here's the thing. By this time and this year, nothing, Gates was talking about how much she appreciated the story arc that Crusher had, that she said it was the best act of business she's ever had to do in anything, which sadly is not exactly a high bar. Now, Worf has had tons of great moments and stories, and Michael's been able to enjoy that, along with wearing the damn makeup longer than anybody else ever had to in history. But nothing's going to happen to any great length, especially detail like that, unless he's okay with it. So he might have even pushed for it. We'll hear about all that eventually. I just thought of all things, the hair was there you go. A poster you made is on Nichelle's office Instagram. Cool. Congratulations. Yay. So I walk into 10 forward and say, bartender, give me a swig of Trek and be quick about it. Did you get it? Older Worf looks dashing to you. Yeah. Boy, I waded into this whole Worf gate, didn't I? Yeah. Worf gate. I wish I'd known that last week. We were talking about it a million different times. Well, Linda, I'm sorry. And replying to Narda. When has Worf ever looked just joyous? Good. Fred Tatascore was at that GalaxyCon too. Yay. Hey, LT. Good to see you too. You saw the Supernatural show with the Scooby-Doo? Okay. Well, but then, so there we've got one. There's one at least. But see, it's a fun-loving show in a kind of a niche where they can take the risk to do that. Somebody put the expense down to have, because it was expensive to do that. Oh, excuse me. Uhura had the first Bluetooth. Yeah, well, that we saw anyway. Uh, Scooby Natural is the episode and it rocks. Okay, now you convince me. I don't know anything about Supernatural aside from their Supernatural chasers, so I have to see it. It's kind of like the folk version of the X Files, right? The brothers. We have a vote for Dashing here from Narda. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm recirculating. Boy, the chat has been buggy here just to navigate it. Hi, Mona. This is perfectly fine. You know what? You're a Trek fan. I totally get it, and I think you are the vast majority of most fandom. You better be, because otherwise there's been a ghost holding up the success of this whole franchise from the original series on. So you're here today. You're here today, and you know everything Trekland, especially Portal, is like a mini con all year long. So there you go. Yay. You can't go to a con and not pay much. Yeah. And you can, yeah, find a way sometime. Maybe, don't know where home is, Mona. I know you've probably mentioned it, but I don't know. Maybe there's a way to get some kind of a comp or something. Volunteer, maybe? Hmm. The Inably Below with Robert Mitchum. Yeah. Wonder if he would have disagreed more with the God aspect of DS9, the secular versus faith. Well, that was an enigma of DS9, and it kind of came down on the side of a little bit of unexplainable faith out there. You know, the wormhole builder aliens. Uh, oh, excuse me, everybody. I don't know what's going on here. Maybe it's the heat. The only AI you need to help find a babe is Vic Fontaine, Pally. Oh, that's funny. I guess you're reacting to our visitors in the chat, maybe. How is Dr. Ali doing? New baby and family. We have crossed paths a couple of times very briefly in our chat, and he's doing fine, hanging in there. Yes, yeah. Dr. Ali, the jacket model. You saw that, right? The EMH, the Expo Matu hologram. Please state the nature of your purchasing inquiry. That's pretty funny. I wonder if I can grab that. Well, see, this is what happened. This is the importance of travel, Stephen. See, yeah. Before you learn that people outside Texas didn't know what I'm fixing to. Okies know too. I'm fixing to. Yeah. And then you just say, "Bless your heart." And that's deep south. That's more southeastern, but still, absolutely. Try asking the country what a bar ditch is. Is that where you go to fall after you've drank too much at the pub? Yeah. Um, the great YouTube documentary of Nichelle talking about I think that's from the Emmy, the TV Academy collection. Yeah. Just be glad. Just be glad Worf isn't a hairless mole rat eggplant. That's what that's what Michael said in the beginning at the same time he was rejecting the ludicrous first offer early in Discovery before somebody got a little over themselves. Yeah, and the reality of the world checked in. Oh, well, now I'm envious, Melanie. You met Jesko von Puttkamer. I just went years saying his name in speeches and writing it in descriptions. You actually got to meet Jesko von Puttkamer. That's awesome. You were touched by what Nichelle said about him in her documentary. He wanted to know if Uhura's legs were as beautiful in person as on TV. That's great. Thank you, Rose. I'll look for the video card on my Instagram. Thank you very much. Okay, bye-bye, Halbjorn. Yes, we are remembering that Worf is not a married man, so of course he's not going to be. no doubts that you know what a bar ditch is. Let's see. Let's see. Mm. Oh, Mona. I mean, don't give anything away. But what part of the country are you in? Are you in that Kentucky, St. Louis area storming, or I'm guessing, asking, guessing. There we are. End of the chat. RIP hashtag the chat. Well, everybody, I hope you've had a good time. Yeah, I hit like a ton of bricks on Sunday. But I mean, we were kind of, it's never easy, even when you're in that mode, to expect it. And dare I say, we have a few more ahead of us. Well, of course, we have all kinds ahead of us in the years ahead, but we're going to have a few more probably sooner than later. And we'll be expecting that. Hey, Dr. Beckett. Mm, Captain, I'm receiving hailstorms. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Chatting is easier on Facebook. Yes. Oh, Noblesville, Indiana, another Hoosier. Well, there you go, Mona. Um, maybe someday you could make it down to do some volunteering and make it down to Starbase Indy over Thanksgiving weekend. They're very fanish and, home run. So maybe there's a way you can get to a convention yet and still get home with your shirt on, as they say. Anyway, everybody, thanks again. Yes, thanks again for joining us here. We've had a good time here talking about Nichelle. Once again, I'd like to remind everybody to thank you for our Patreons. If you want to get in and try and help support us gradually grow the streaming end of Trekland, it's patreon.com/Trekland Live. The perks, it's $5 or $10 a month. Choose yourself. It's very simple perks. We are on hiatus right now for the Trek Files, but we've got 8 seasons up, and you can go check out all the other Roddenberry podcasts. Mission Log is plugging along. Sci-Fi 5 Daily is there with a little bit of sci-fi history every day. There's all kinds of great stuff at podcast.roddenberry.com, as well as our back catalog. And yes, we're getting down to the deadline. So if you are thinking about it, we would love to have you in LA for the Great Birds Origins Tour. It'll start both days and end at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. You don't have to stay there, but there is a 20% discount if you use the promo code GR100. Rod Roddenberry will be with me for part of the time. Yeah, and Trek Vegas on the horizon after that. As always, it's Larry Nemechek on Twitter. I'd love to keep this conversation going. It's Larry Nemechek's Trekland on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Hit the alerts there and on Facebook too, and Instagram. I'd love to have you there too. A lot of fun stuff on Instagram. Portal47.net's where the Portales live and hang out when they're not on our private page, of course. That's your minicon all year long, no matter where your center seat is. It's times like these that we always take a breath and realize how much we take for granted sometimes. If you haven't read, I don't know how you'd be able to get a copy. There may be a spike in cost or a spike in unavailability right now. But Beyond Uhura is Nichelle's book. It's out there. You can enjoy her music. It's out there. And of course, most of all, you can enjoy Woman in Motion, the documentary, all of Nichelle's episodes on Star Trek and beyond. And I dare say that in the coming days and weeks, a lot of creators are going to be putting a lot more Nichelle content up on YouTube and other places. So it'll be popping up in all our feeds for a while as we remember the original queen of Star Trek. We've got the first lady of Star Trek. We've got the grandma of Star Trek. I think it's fair to say that Nichelle was our queen. Anyway, it's great. Thanks again for another Tuesday afternoon, guys, spending it with me. Be looking for Second Opinion popping up on your YouTube. Be ready to subscribe there, because those will pop up generally on the weekends, but you never know when. Trek Files will be back on Tuesdays in another month. And until then, until our next time we meet, stay healthy, my friends. Stay woke, do all the things, and yeah, Trek well, everybody.